Welcome, Neil.
Thanks for having me.
Neil,
Good
before
to
we
see
get
you all.
into it, it's great to see you, brother. Hope your family's well. It's always really nice to see you. Before we get into it with Neil, everybody is watching #marketing for the now. It's been a lot of fun interacting and taking questions from Twitter in real time. So #marketing for the now, screenshot our conversations here and add, and also love everybody who's quoting these incredible insights for our remarkable guests. Neil, at this point, I'd be mad at this audience if they don't know the Warby story, because not only have you and your partners executed incredibly over this last, what feels like almost a decade. How long has the company been around?
It's exactly a decade. We launched in 2010, which is crazy.
Bro, we're old. This hurts. Watching this obviously very closely, such a fan of you and David and the rest of the team from a human standpoint, the business execution, even the store footprints, I'm like a big fan of personally. So I don't want to go too deep, but can you give me the 35-second Warby Parker story, and then I'll let Zubin kind of jump in with the first official question?
Sure. Glasses were too damn expensive, right? $400 or $500. We thought that we could build an amazing business by charging $95 instead. We thought buying glasses was a broken process. You go in, the glasses are in a glass display behind the counter, out of reach, and you felt like you were constantly being upsold and getting taken advantage of. So while my business partners and I were in business school, we wrote a business plan, launched it. We're featured in Vogue and GQ. The company took off like a rocket ship. And when we started, only 1% of glasses were sold online. And now it's about 5%. And 10 years in, I would have thought that it would have been farther along. And I bet you COVID accelerates this a bit, but we've been the primary driving force of that, selling glasses on warbyparker.com.
You know what's funny? Before Zubin gets in here, I recall you talking a lot about press, PR, and you just did it again. I have a fun question that I want to learn from your perspective. In 2010, getting those plugs in those dominant magazines was a real spark for you. Again, this is literally the fourth or fifth time I've heard you mention. I've never asked you, and we've interacted enough that I'm surprised I haven't. Do you feel like somebody watching right now who wants to start a direct-to-consumer toothpaste business or sneaker, that you feel, or in, let's say in the Vogue category, something that skews more female, do you feel that press clipping carries the same weight of explosion today as it did 10 years ago?
Definitely not. I think the fundamentals are the same, but the mediums are different. So the fundamentals being, hey, you need a hook, you need a narrative, you need something that people want to talk about at the dinner table, but you need to go super wide very quickly in a bunch of different outlets. And yeah, there aren't the dominant sort of offline outlets like they were a decade ago.
Do you think there's been something that can replace that? Like if tomorrow you and I were on some like Netflix competition show where we got teamed up and we have to beat, Zubin and Andrea and we're like, but we need a lot of awareness. Where would you, if I was like, yo, what do you think what would you answer to that?
So instead of going to the editors-in-chief of yesteryear, right, yes, you go into the ambassadors and the influencers of today, sort of exactly the playbook that you rolled out with the All-In Challenge, right? How do you get individuals that have followings that, right, are constantly storytelling themselves and, give them your story to tell? Understood.
Zubin?
So Neil, it's really interesting. I heard a quote from you that you didn't know that you wanted to create a direct-to-consumer business and you got in to solve problems. Talk to us a little bit about that. What kind of problems were you looking to solve? And then how do you go from not wanting to start a direct-to-consumer business to becoming the North Star of everyone's direct-to-consumer conversation for the last 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, direct-to-consumer has now become one of those, like business buzzwords. Yep. At the end of the day, right, glasses were too expensive. And one of the reasons why they were expensive is because you have a big company that wholesales frames and lenses to retailers who then mark them up 3 to 5 times and then sell it to you, the customer. So for us, it was just about bypassing the middleman. making the glasses ourselves, selling it directly to our customers. And then we could bring down the price, still have good margins, but you're just, there's one less hand in the pot, that's taking margin out, and putting that margin in consumers' hands. The other advantage with going direct to consumer was that we had this relationship that we could build, and we could ask them questions, and we could know about our customers, and it could influence our product development pipeline. It could influence our customer service policies. It could influence every aspect of the business to make it more customer friendly every single day. The problem was expensive glasses with a crappy shopping experience. The solution was building direct relationships with our consumers.
I think it's really interesting that in a time where augmented reality didn't exist, some of these things in terms of try it on virtually didn't exist, you were able to sell a product that is so difficult to go to a lens crafters or whatnot to select, let alone being able to select it online. Talk to us a little bit about the home try-on model that you had and what kind of results that achieved early on and how you've kind of evolved that over the last 10 years.
So people are terrible glasses shoppers. They do it once every couple of years, right? So an infrequent purchase. They don't have a lot of practice around it. They rely very heavily on the store that they, go to help them find the right frame. When we were working on our strategy, we would ask our friends, we'd buy them a beer and say like, hey, what do you think of this idea? And we kept hearing the same thing over and over again, which was, I don't know if I would trust buying a pair of glasses online. So we knew that was a real issue. And the question was how to solve it. And in 2010, there wasn't the, iPhone True Depth camera. And there was some facial recognition software. We licensed some where you could, kind of throw on a pair of glasses on a static image, and we tested it and it actually performed worse, right? There was lower conversion because it took away people's confidence rather than giving them more confidence. So we came up with this idea to ship people 5 pairs of glasses. And, if there was a pair they wanted, at that point, we would put in the prescription lenses and send it to them. And we call this a home try-on program. It's still a major driver of growth for us. But again, it all comes down to how do you ask a lot of questions to your customers to understand what their behavior is today, and how do you solve for their issues, and then you can move them along to perhaps new channels if you solve their real challenges.
Keep
we
going.
Were talking to Berg a little while ago from Shopify Plus, and he mentioned the top 100 SKUs that Gary was leaned into, because it's so important, obviously, in a space like yours, and anything online, really. In terms of what you've seen, since you started to now, obviously merchandising is a key component. What kind of trends have you seen? Are you seeing the same types of frames that are hot year over year? How are you evolving those? And then what are you actually seeing in terms of those trends in terms of design?
Sure. So there's a rule in retail, and the research shows this, that larger selection drives people into stores, but smaller selection drives conversion. So you almost want the perception you have something for everybody, get them in, and then give them a few options to choose from so you don't have paralysis by analysis.
Yep.
We're trying to leverage technology to make it easier for people to purchase while also creating a larger product line. And that's because people's faces are different. And for glasses in particular, we have a bunch of different fits that we need. But when we started, we had 100 SKUs, whereas a typical optical shop had 1,500 to 2,000 SKUs. So that helped us manage the business because, increased SKU count introduces complexity. Complexity is the enemy of any business. But over time, as we've become more sophisticated operators, we've been able to introduce more complexity and expand our product line. And one of the things that we've done, in addition to having our home try-on, we want to help people select the 5 pairs of glasses for their home try-on. So how do we create a sizing convention that didn't exist in the optical industry before? How do we create tools like our virtual try-on? So if you download the Warby Parker app, our iOS app, we use the True Depth camera to give you a true to scale virtual try-on of the frames. And that gives people confidence, and we can, send them to, even though we have a larger selection, send them to fewer options to choose from.
You mentioned earlier the typical buying pattern, perhaps before Warby Parker, was like every couple of years you change your glasses. Have you seen that amount of time shrink, and have you been able to influence that in terms of your activities with your consumer?
Yeah, we have. Our customers buy from us more frequently than the industry average, which is great. There hasn't been a radical change. Changing customer behavior is really difficult. And where you do see changes, right, I wonder how big of a change that is, meaning like, what is the driver of that? So, right, buying certain products off of Amazon, right? What do we prioritize as consumers? We always prioritize value, so the price to quality ratio. We always prioritize convenience. So is that really a fundamental consumer shift of, going to a website as opposed to a store? Yes, but because of very obvious reasons. So with glasses, if we do make it easier, are people going to buy it more frequently? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be dramatic. Like I don't want to build my business around assuming a really high customer lifetime value where people are buying glasses every month when people typically do it every year. If that happens, that's just great upside for us.
So Neil, we've been talking about, not we collectively, but just the world has been talking about retail and the inevitable end of retail for a number of years now. I think several years ago, when the conversation around retail bankruptcies was happening, one of the highlights during that time was the fact that some digitally native direct-to-consumer brands, such as Warby Parker, were actually opening up physical stores. Can you talk to us about that strategy, why you did it, and what role it has in your growth moving forward?
Sure. So, right, any good company, they want to tackle the largest addressable market possible. And again, when we started, less than 1% of glasses were sold online. Now it's closer to 5%. So there's still 95% of glasses being sold in bricks and mortar. So
Neil, I apologize for interrupting you. When you hear that, is that just stunning to you, given the size and scale that that you're at, and the fast following competitive set that I'm sure there's, I don't know. So that means you've done a really good job and probably gotten lucky that there hasn't been somebody else great come along. But there must be an unlimited amount of people that are number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 players in your space. When you just hear that sheer amount, like it's how I think about e-com overall, whether it's 13%, 18%, like it's just starting.
Right. And the thing is, you can ride the wave of market share shifting, but there's still so much commerce being done in physical settings that we wanted to take advantage of that. And our stores, not only are highly profitable and these great way to sell product, but they also are marketing vehicles. Every storefront raises awareness for Warby Parker, and we actually saw our online customer acquisition costs decline as awareness increased because store count increased.
I get it. Neil, anything from an innovation standpoint that you're seeing from your industry or the competitive set that excites you? Even outside of your industry, maybe as a consumer, something you're seeing in, just giving you a sense of the audience, probably half entrepreneurs, half Fortune 500 CPG executives. Anything stand out as an observation, as such a leader, thought leader, an observer, anything even funny, silly, and different?
Well, I heard you ask, what is a product that you recently bought? And I got a Theragun and I love it, because my back was all messed up because we all don't have the right setup at home. But, it still amazes me how slow incumbents are to respond. And COVID forced some incumbents to move a little faster, thankfully. And where that tends to be is, how do we make life more convenient for our customers, even whether that's restaurants, right? Setting up takeout windows and bringing stuff to your car, or, setting up a curb lane in New York City, right? Those are basic things that we should have been doing beforehand. And it's easy to find ideas for that by just, asking customers questions and better understanding what their needs and wants are.
Zubin?
So as I mentioned earlier, Warby Parker's been the North Star of pretty much every direct-to-consumer brand that we've spoken to over the last 10 years. You didn't intend to be that, perhaps, but you are. Where to from here?
So we're pushing a lot into telemedicine and to telehealth, and COVID and the pandemic is accelerating trends across the board. It's certainly doing it in healthcare. We've recently launched contact lenses, but we have a prescription check app that you can renew your prescription on. And again, if we're able to provide diagnostic tools that are cheaper and more convenient and more accurate, that's the future for all of us, and the future for healthcare, and certainly for vision care.
Amazing.
Neil, any innovation around packaging of products coming to people's homes? I feel like that's the next frontier. I feel like there's just a real opportunity for deep innovation. And I'm not saying, let's make it out of corn, handwritten notes at actual scale, literally hiring 700 people, surprise and delight, lottery ticket dynamics, maybe packaging, any thoughts on, I just feel like that last mile feels like an exciting thing for my brain. Just curious, have you been thinking about that at all?
Definitely, right. What is the pandemic causing? It's causing loneliness. And where can brands differentiate? Through exceptional customer service, through the personalization that you just mentioned, right? And again, that's solving another customer problem. So regardless of where you see these challenges, right, you can take them into your domain, into your category, into your industry, and find ways to differentiate. So I think that's, we had, the Surgeon General had mentioned that we had an epidemic of loneliness pre-COVID. Now, right, it's only worse. And one of the ways that we can solve that and make customers happy is through personalized notes. And it makes a world of difference. And something like that is a lot more impactful to customers than spending that extra 10% on slightly prettier packaging, for example.
Understood. Zubin?
Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Would love to do this again soon. Can you talk to us, last question, around your focus on internal culture and what kind of new ways to fuel and support your employees specifically around this period of time?
So we had such a culture centered around being next to each other physically. And so this has been a real challenge, and we've had to learn, right, how do we create that connectivity? And the first thought was, okay, let's do everything on video conferencing. And then you start to look at the research, and it's actually, well, there's a body of research that shows that you can better discern somebody's emotions by just listening to them, as opposed to seeing facial expressions as well. The other thing is that there's a lot of cognitive load in being on Zoom calls all day, because there's a slight delay between what you see visually and what you hear, and that makes you tired.
Wow.
So we've actually decreased the number of video conferences that we were doing. But one of the other things I'm doing is I used to have a weekly all hands. Now I'm doing that twice a week with shorter videos. And so it's just more frequent interactions, but slightly different.
Go 5G to kill the lag.
Right.
Neil, thank you so much. Continued success. Wishing you
Thanks for
a
having
lot
me.
of
It's
health.
great to see you guys.